welcome to the College Football Show on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sport 24/7, 365. I'm your host, Spinksy, and I'm proud to have Nate Dowdy with me today. Nate from Remorse Sports. Nate, I hear the good people of Sports Talk Line are giving you your own show. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I took it against them, against their will. So now they're putting me on the hot seat, believe it or not. Monday afternoons, 3 p.m. I run the whole gambit of sports with only my unique takes. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the new Rooney Rule. We're going to be talking about UFC, the fight with Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns on May 30th. We're going to be talking about if Antonio Brown is a fit in Seattle because Russell Wilson wants him there, and many other things.
Very nice. Can't wait. That sounds like an awesome show. I'll be tuning in for sure. Now, usually we would have gone 24 hours earlier, but I had some technical difficulties yesterday. I was rather sick, and I'm still feeling it now. But no matter, we will push through. So on today's show, we're going to talk about Mike Gundy going on a rant back in April. We're going to talk about schools returning on the 1st of June, which is in about 7 days' time. And I wrote a very interesting article during the week about the top 20 college football schools of all time. So we'll have a look at that one too. But first of all, let's talk Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State coach who's been around the traps for a few years now, came out on the 7th of April and went on this rant about how college kids are specimens of athletes and they won't get sick and they won't get the virus, and we need to have them back at school now, and no one really cares if they get sick because they'll get over it. They're still young. And now the NCAA has turned around and said, yes, you're allowed to return to school. What exactly has changed in that 2 months that from when Gundy was so wrong and everyone was at him to now when the NCAA needs some money?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because if you remember years ago, Mike Gundy was considered kind of a folk hero to a lot of the college kids because he really stood up for some of his players in a really invigorated way during a press conference. His famous line was, "I'm 40, and you give me this kind of stuff." So I mean, he was considered, the ultimate coach, the coach that the players would go to war for. And now he kind of comes off as dismissive of these players. Really, I think it's done him. He's almost had a crystal ball all along. If you look at what he said, it looked backward a couple months ago, but now here we are.
Yeah, and we seem to be in that spot now where the NCAA announced on Wednesday last week that they would allow football and basketball to come back to practice. There's a few things about that. Obviously, they're the two biggest money makers, so I understand why they've done that because they also need to make some money. But a few months ago, heads of education at school were saying, we will not have football or sport a return in any way unless students are on campus as well. We are about the students first. We are a college first, and then we are a sports team. Turns out you're actually not. You're a sports team first.
yeah, a little reality.
Yeah. So the new rule for the next couple of weeks anyway is 8 hours of on-campus work, 2 hours of 2 hours of on-field and 6 hours in the gym. So that'll get, I believe it's up to the individual schools if they actually want to come back or not. But the way I see it is this is going to happen, and this is going down, and they're all going to come in the right direction. And there was already a few schools who were looking at coming back anyway. But now that the NCAA has said this is a widespread thing, I think are we looking for an actual start in August, Nate? Are we close?
Yeah, I'd love to hope so. I think we're probably going to have business as usual. I really don't think they're going to really have to push back and rearrange things too much, which is good. And the good news is, let's say if something did happen, they could easily kind of push back the schedule because you can play football any time of the year. So it's not a sport like baseball where you're kind of handcuffed into avoiding.
Yeah, and I get that too. I think I wrote something earlier in the week. The first game of the season was supposed to be between Notre Dame and Navy over in Ireland. And so that one probably won't go ahead. Still, I can't see traveling to Ireland, having games over there and having all that set up would actually still work. But things might change. We've still got another 3 months, I suppose. I think we're 100 days out roughly from the season starting. So the last week in August. So we're almost there. I'm hoping that kids can get back to school, start to go through their programs again, and we can virtually have a normal season as if none of this actually happened.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, because that's one thing college football does have over pro football, particularly in most other markets, where the fervor is there in college football. I mean, if you're a part of an alumni, you're a part of it for life.
You are.
It's like being in the fraternity. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that college football desperately needs. College sports aren't the same without crowds.
Yeah, that's going to be hard too. Like, as we don't know whether we're going to have games without fans, or whether we're just going to have all your conference games first, so that there's not a lot of travel going on and less chance of spreading this virus and stuff, or whether we're going to have any season at all. But every single week, there seems to be a step forward in us having a season. So let's just hope next week we're sitting here and we can talk about something else. So this will be good. I'm excited.
Enough COVID. God damn it.
Yeah. So look, I was doing some research during the week and I found that the top 10 win list of all time, and I was a bit taken back. The top 20, sorry, and I've gone through this list, and there was a few teams on here which I didn't think were actually any good. And I'll be honest, I've been a fan of college football for about 20, 25 years, but I haven't been around always. So some of the teams on this list surprised me that they're actually that good at all. So I was a bit shocked. So I wrote an article. It's very in-depth. It's about 1,500 words. If you want to go on the Sports Talkline website to check it out, that'd be great. Thank you. If not, we will talk about this list here and now. So, Nate, I just want to sort of start with, I'll start with number 20 on that list, the Clemson Tigers. Now, we've all seen the Dabo Swinney team of since 2008, and they've been sensational. They've been in the Final Four every year. They've won 2 national championships. They've won 6 or 7 ACC titles in the last 12 years. They're the most dominant team in their conference. Having said that, before 2008, they weren't that much chop. I think between the 40s and the 70s, they had Frank Howard as their coach, and he won virtually everything back then. But they seem to go in stages where they're awesome and they're not. So I think having to see them scrape in on this list, I actually thought they'd be a lot higher. They're sitting at 20 here, but obviously their stock will continue to rise. Dabo Swinney has a 130 and 31 record over the last 5 years. That is insane. Over the last 12 years. That's insane that he can be so good and so strong for so many years. And yes, they are in a pretty average conference. Nate, do you think they deserve to be on this list?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you think they deserve to be on the list? Like, obviously, they're down there.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now you can't name 3 better programs than Clemson. And they're the front runners at the moment to be national champions, or at least,
again.
I mean, if you had to guarantee one team next year to be in the Final Four playoff, I would guarantee Clemson.
Exactly, yeah.
So, but it did surprise me they were a top 20 overall, because I was aware that the Ivy Leagues dominated in the 1800s and the early 1900s. So that didn't surprise me, but I was surprised, Clemson was that high, I have to be honest.
Yeah. So look, at number 19, we've got Auburn. Would you like to take over Auburn? I know you're a big Auburn fan yourself.
Yeah, Auburn's great. I mean, I was surprised another team that was ranked that high, because, again, they were in a conference with powerhouse like Alabama. Alabama's been good for forever. So I was a little surprised, again, to see them at the 19th overall ranked team, particularly when the Ivy Leagues really dominated. Those damn dorks, those damn elitists dominating. But not anymore.
Yeah, I think the move to the SEC for Auburn certainly helped them. I believe they were an independent team up until about the 70s. So the fact that they moved to the SEC has really made them more of a household name, and getting to compete against those stronger teams week in week out certainly helps. I think they most recent national championship was 2010. They also won one in 2004. So Auburn have been solid throughout this time, and they've always been defensively unbelievable too. I think they've got that sort of culture of like the Panthers or the Ravens back in the day, who were just defensively dominant.
Yeah, I mean Auburn, and then they had a superstar like Cam Newton fall into their lap and transferred over there. And his 1 year, actually, his Cam's brother just transferred there the other day.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be the starting quarterback. But I just for memory's sake, that'd be cool if he was.
Yeah, pretty nice. So on this list, we've got a few teams here in this top 20 who have been Division 1 schools, Division 2 schools. We're not going to talk about them because the competition is not as good. So at number 18, we have Wittenberg, which I've never even heard of, I'll be honest with you. At 17, we've got Mount Union, which also I've never heard of and don't really care about. At number 16, we have my team, the LSU Tigers. Now, you've all sat here and listened to me bang on about how good LSU have been the last few like last year itself. They deserve to be on this list. They've been around since 1893. They've got 16 conference titles and 4 national championships. They've actually won 3 of those national championships in the last 15 years. So as dominant as they were last year, they've also had their moments over the last 20 to 15 years. So they've had a total of 350 guys drafted, and 16 of those this year. Surprisingly, they've only had 2 Heisman winners, Joe Burrow, obviously, last year, and Billy Cannon from 1959. Now, Billy, I'm not sure who you are, mate, but I'm sure you would have been awesome. So thank you. And they've also had some excellent coaches as well, guys like Nick Saban, Ed Ogeron, and Les Miles too. So it's nice to see my team on this list. At number 15, we have another SEC team in Georgia. Nate, how do you feel about Georgia?
Georgia, man, they probably have one of the best all-time college football players ever in Herschel Walker. So that alone just sets you on a completely different platform. But again, they're an SEC team that just so far we've had 3 SEC teams in the top 20, and there's going to be more to come. So it just shows you just how competitive the freaking conference was. I mean,
I still remember when they had the 150th year this year, and they were showing video of Herschel Walker, and that guy was just dominant for so many years. He was unbelievable. Yeah.
Did you ever hear of like his training habits that he'd have? Like he'd do something, a ridiculous amount of push-ups and sit-ups, was anti-weightlifting and then he'd have these really weird sleep habits. Like he'd sleep for 2 hours and then he'd be up all night, and he'd only eat like bread and soup and vegetables. So I mean, he was very strict, but he had this really strange diet at the same time.
Oh, nice. No, I just remember seeing the highlights and going, how do you stop him? Like he was like he was 20 against like 8-year-olds and just pounded them over and over again.
Well, you don't want to say you're pounding 8-year-olds and then not make
Not on this show. Excuse that. Excuse me. Yeah, look, Georgia's got a win percentage of 0.655, which has them 15th overall, that's a good win percentage. That means that they usually win about 8 to 9 games every season. That's good. 2-time national championship champion, but their last one was in 1980. Georgia's had a few close calls the last couple of years. Obviously, we all remember them going down to Bama in the national championship about 4 or 5 years ago. They had the chance this year, but they come up against a red-hot LSU team and couldn't go any further. So I think Georgia are on the cusp, and they've signed a young kid this year as their quarterback, Jamie Newman, and really good things. I'm hearing good things about Newman, so I think Georgia will be strong this year. LSU, of course, I think will have a down year, so I'd be very surprised if the SEC championship game is not between Bama and Georgia.
Yeah, one thing one thing about Georgia, you think about this. They almost won the national championship a couple of years ago against Alabama. And if it weren't for Tua going into the game, they win the national championship. If Jalen Hurts has stayed in the game. And it's even more interesting because Jalen Hurts beat out Tua in the spring training. Most people would have redshirted.
Yeah.
Imagine if Tua had redshirted. Georgia wins the national championship.
And then that changes the future. Like that, Tua might not have gone to the Dolphins. Tua might have transferred somewhere else. Georgia could have gone on to win like 2 or 3. It's just that one moment, that game in overtime, just changed everything. So changed the culture. And I feel for there or thereabouts it almost every year, and they just can't quite get across the line. So I think having Newman there this year is going to help them. So pretty good. Now, next up on the list, we have number 14, Princeton. Now, Nate, you went to Princeton, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. I remember the fine football team in 1895 that won consecutive national championships.
Yep.
And then they had the fine coaching prodigy they called Jason Garrett out of Princeton.
He did too. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, look, I'm not smart enough to know enough about Princeton, so we're just going to leave them on the list and we're going to move on. At number 13, the Tennessee Volunteers. This was their 130th season, and Tennessee have got the win percentage of .67, which is pretty good. Tennessee have been there or thereabouts for a lot of years. They've won a few national championships, but their last one was in 1998. So the last 22 years, they've sort of had a bit of a dry spell. I'm reading a lot on their school of this year and the school of next year, and Tennessee have got a strong program coming forward. So again, being in the SEC, it's going to be difficult, but I just see them becoming stronger soon. I don't think they're there yet, but obviously being at number 13 on this list, they've had a good history throughout their time. So anything you want to add on Tennessee?
Yeah, you basically covered it. They haven't been the same program since in the 21st century. They just haven't. It also helped that they had a player, and it's interesting because they ended that streak with a player like Peyton Manning. I mean, they had one of the greatest college football quarterbacks ever, actually one of the best college football players ever to never win a Heisman, probably. And you would have thought that would have spiked up recruiting, but they just haven't been the same. They haven't been the same program. I mean, you look at their competition in the SEC East. I mean, they just haven't been able to keep up with the Floridas and the Georgias.
Yeah, it's certainly difficult having so many good teams in one conference, and I think you can get sort of lost over the years if you're not competitive year after year. So I think the next couple of years are going to tell a lot about their program and what they've got. And Nate, coming in at number 13 is one of your local schools. Do you want to talk about USC?
Oh, yeah. Well, SC has just been – I'm actually really surprised they're not higher on the list. That if it weren't for the dominance of the Dorks in the Ivy Leagues, when football really didn't matter, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm really surprised. They've had a ton of Heisman Trophy winners. They've had the who's who of elite players to be drafted. So, yeah, I'm a little surprised they're at least not in the top 10. Yeah, that's another elite program that hasn't been elite playing wise in the past few years. Yeah. And they just keep looking for that coach that's eventually going to replace Pete Carroll.
Yeah, well, they won back-to-back national titles in 03-04. I believe that's when Pete Carroll was there. And now, most of you know, I don't like the Seahawks at all, so I'm not a big Pete Carroll fan, but I did enjoy Pete Carroll as a college coach. I also don't like the Seahawks, but that's a different story. Of course, the Trojans have won 11 national titles and have one of the game's greatest on their books in O.J. Simpson. Mm-hmm. Now, Nate, I'm sure you would have watched a lot of O.J. Simpson over the years. Was he faster on the field or faster on the highway?
Oh, faster on the highway. That guy's got some major getaway speed, man. No, but he's OJ's the man. Have you ever, speaking of him, have you ever seen any of his Twitter videos that he posts?
All the time. He's great.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, he comes off as the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. He speaks from the heart. He speaks to moments that are affecting him and affecting the world. And afterwards you're like, I love this guy. This
Yeah,
guy's
right.
awesome. He murdered nobody. It's fine.
Exactly. I'm willing to have bury those bodies and then move on.
Exactly. Yes. So look, a school which calls OJ Simpson as one of their own has to be on this list. But if we move along, we've got Penn at number 11, and we've got your other school, Harvard, at number 10, Nate. But number 9 is Penn State, and I know, Nate, that you love some Penn State. So would you like to talk about Penn State at number 9, the first team inside the top 10?
Yeah, I got my joke out of the way already. So I mean, I've already unleashed it. So I'm done with I'm never ever. I think it's important people admit their biases. I have an extreme bias toward Penn State, and that just the way it wasn't the way the university just handled that tragedy, that the tragedies that happened, but it was the student body. The student body and the apologies they made for their university and the program was just disgusting, in my opinion. And I'm never, ever going to look at them fairly on the football field.
Yeah, they certainly went about it the wrong way. I think, and obviously, we're not here to talk about that, but we're here to talk about their football on the field. And one of the first years I started watching college football, I was sort of trying to decide on a team to watch. And Penn State had one of their first whiteouts where everyone comes dressed in white. It is a sensational sight to see. Getting 104,000 or 103,000 to all dress in white is a feat on itself. But a nighttime game under lights, it's just sensational. And I can't believe that more teams don't do this. Whether it's yellow or black or whatever, but it's one of those things that you want to see. And so I applaud them for doing that. Of course, their first year was in 1887, and they've only won 2 national titles since then. But the win percentage of almost 70%. So they're winning enough games. They're just not sort of being able to go on with it to win the national championship. So they probably saw their best football in the early 80s. But I think Penn State, certainly they have their years. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, they went 12-1 or 12 or 10-2 or something. And they were looking okay. And then the following year, they go 4-8. So I just don't think they've got the consistency there they used to once have.
Yeah, good. I hope they finish last in the Big Ten every year. I hope just some school like Wisconsin just trounces them every year.
I like Wisconsin. All right, so moving on. Number 8 on our list is Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, Nebraska down there, it's not just football. Like, football is the way of life. There's not a lot else going on down there. So I think in Nebraska, it's Friday night, it's Saturday, it's NFL Sunday, it's football. That's it. They won 5 national championships, including 3 in the mid-90s, and they were certainly a dominant force. I believe down in Nebraska, Nate, there's not much else going on, is there?
No, Nebraska is what it was all about. And then this is another program I actually was surprised it didn't finish a little higher. They were really freaking good in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that was if not the premier program in all of college football, it was up there. I mean, and that's one of the things that's kind of disappointing about how their programs performed over the last couple of years, because I think that would just make the Big Ten that much more fun since they've entered the Big Ten. Imagine them like having those stacked rosters against a team like Ohio State or a Michigan or a Penn State. So
yeah, and having that there too, like as you said, being in that conference, that's going to make you games harder. And and tougher, and more kids want to actually go in there. And despite there not being much in Nebraska, I think it'd be a good spot to go to school because they are so football focused that you're going to get the best out of yourself and the best out of your team because that's what they want. They want you to be good. You're not just going there because they're good at basketball or they're good with arts. They're good at football. So you go there and you work hard.
Yeah, and you want to, imagine if Hitler had gone to the liberal arts college in Nebraska, things could have turned out much differently.
Things could have changed for him. Right. On that note, we'll move on to number 7, Oklahoma Sooners. The Sooners come in at number 7, and they've been around for 125 years now. They've got 7 national titles to their name. But most recently, they've had 7 Heisman Trophy winners and 2 in the last 3 years. We all remember Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, who are kind of starting to find their feet in the NFL. And I think Oklahoma have been dominant in the quarterback ranks the last few years. I actually didn't expect them to be this high on the list. Being number 7 overall has them with a win percentage of just over 70%. That's a lot for a team that I knew were okay, but I didn't think were actually that strong over the years.
Yeah, it was interesting because they actually had former Cowboys coach Barry Switzer, who is probably the best coach in their history, or up there at least. And they were ahead of the curve in a lot of ways. They were one of the first programs to start recruiting and playing black quarterbacks before, when that was kind of unheard of. So they were front runners in a lot of ways. Not front runners, excuse me. They were revolutionaries in a lot of ways. And if you ever want to listen to clips of a professional sports coach, and you just want great one-liners, listen to Barry Switzer. Freaking hilarious.
Very nice. Any relation to Ryan Switzer?
I don't think so, no.
No. And obviously, their coach at the moment is Lincoln Riley, and Riley was my favorite to be head coach at the Cowboys before we signed Mike McCarthy. And I wrote a passionate play about how I want Riley, or I want Matt Rule, or I want Joe Brady, and I didn't want Mike McCarthy, and we got McCarthy.
Yeah, so, of course.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. The jury's out still on that one. But look, now, Nate, I'm going to let you take number 6 here because the fact you don't like Penn State is the same reason I don't like Notre Dame at number 6. Nate, how can you tell us anything good about a team who's an independent and is too scared to play anybody?
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame is just like one of those polarizing teams. It's either you love them or you hate them. And I'm one of the few people that I'm indifferent. I'm one of the only people that's indifferent about Notre Dame, more on the dislike side. But that's another one of those programs that I think college football is better when they're successful. I mean, they had that flash in the pan year where they went to the national championship game, and Alabama absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I thought the entire year, I was like, what is Notre Dame even doing? They have no business being in this game, even beforehand. They knew they weren't the number 2 best team. So it's been missing for a while, like Manti Te'o's girlfriend.
Stop. I think that was the year they lost me to I think they might finish 3rd or 4th, and they got in, but I think UCF had the undefeated record, and Notre Dame had beaten no one all year. And the fact that they were so talked about, they'll be this, they'll be that. First week, Alabama goes out there and smokes them. It was like 45-6 or something. I think that's why you shouldn't be here. And so I think that's where strength of schedule comes into it too. If you're an independent and you're up against some horrible teams all year, why do you deserve to be in that top 4? I think that if Notre Dame want to get serious about it, why be an independent? I know they get heaps of TV games being in the huge New York market, but why are they not in an SEC or the Big Ten or whatever, and trying to get better competition? Stop being sooks and get out there and have a real go.
Yeah, right. And then they do play Michigan, and they do play USC every year. But come on, let's stack the odds a little bit. They're trying to stack the odds in their favor. I feel like.
Yeah, look, having spent the last few minutes giving them heaps of crap, I will go through their stats. They've won 11 national titles and have 7 Heisman Trophy winners. Now, of the 7 Heisman winners, that puts them equal first overall with Ohio State and Michigan. So having 7 Heisman winners is a huge, considering the Heisman started in about 1938, I think it was. So they've done really well there. They usually get a Heisman winner every 10 to 12 years, so it's good. They've got a win percentage of 72, which is nice, and 908 wins in total. Their last national title was been since 1988, so it's been a while since they've been strong. But hopefully things are going to turn around soon. As we enter the top 5, we've got Yale at 5th overall, and of course we are going to leave the Ivy League schools off this list. So coming to number 4, and one of my favorite teams here, the Texas Longhorns. I think if I wasn't a fan of the LSU Tigers, I'd be a Texas Longhorns fan. I just think the way that they go about their game, they're tough, they're strong. They've got a really good fan base, and being a Cowboys fan, why not like Texas?
Oh, man. You should see some of the girls that are in Austin or that go to that university. Freaking beautiful. I mean, that'd be like
I think we lost Nate.
Yeah, I'm back now. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. I think I overloaded the porn, and then it came back.
Too much going on, man. Too many screens open. Yes, Texas.
Stop watching animal porn.
So I think we might have lost Nate again. He's back. Texas Longhorns. One of their celebrity followers is Matthew Mcconaughey. His new movie, The Gentleman, is fantastic. If you haven't seen it yet, go out and watch that. Don't take your kids with you because there's a lot of bad language in this movie, but definitely worth a watch. And you will always find Matthew at all his Texas Longhorn games. He absolutely loves them. He's always out there in the field doing his thing. And I think Texas have got here. They were the biggest in the 60s. They won 3 national titles in 4 years back in the 60s, and 4 national titles in total and 3 in the 60s. So they've been consistent enough to be number 4 on this list, but haven't really been strong in the last probably 10 to 15 years. So I think some things do need to change down there. They're looking stronger as the years go on. It's just the way college football is these days. There's so many good teams that you need to really have a solid team to stand out. You need to keep those teams year after year. So, and obviously being with college kids, you only get 3 to 4 years out of them. There's a huge turnover. So, Nate, do you think Texas are on their way back at all?
Every other year I hear, we're coming back. We're back. Texas is back. And you had their quarterback, Sam Ehlinger, kind of say, we're back after they won a bowl game. So I'm of the ultimate believe it until I see it, because the last 10 years or so, I mean, you haven't been about 10 years, because the last time they were really competitive is when Colt McCoy was there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's another what if. You want to talk about national championship games. If Colt McCoy doesn't get hurt in that first quarter, that game can look completely different. And maybe we're talking Texas about having 2 national championships in a 5-year span.
Yeah, they sort of when Colt joined the Redskins, I thought, this is going to be the future here. It's going to be awesome. And then he sat behind Alex Smith for a few years, and Colt McCoy's just gone nowhere. And really enjoyed watching him with Texas all those years. But I think, as you said, it's a flip of the coin. You call something and it doesn't work out, and that's sort of had a trickling effect on their their season. So I feel for them, they're close, but I just don't think they're enough to compete with the Bamas and the LSUs. And there's so many strong teams these days that they really need some more to stand out.
Yeah, and what the question you really need to ask are they better than Oklahoma? Because they're never going to go to the playoffs if they're never going to get the Big 12 is never going to get the benefit of the doubt if they're going to have multiple teams into the playoffs. You need to win the Big 12 and most likely go undefeated, or at least be a one-loss team if you're going to have a chance at the playoffs.
Yeah, I think being from the Big 12, you probably need to go undefeated. And during that year, you probably need to beat someone strong out of conference too. Unless the playoffs go to 8 teams, which they may sometime soon. But at the moment, with just 4 teams, there's no way you're getting in. So, yeah, and talking about that, let's move into our top 3. Now, number 3 overall is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, some of you may know I have a bit of a disdain for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So let me just go through this really fast. Alabama's first game was in 1892. They've won 17 national titles, 32 conference championships, and they've been strong and the benchmark for college football for many, many, many years. In 2009, they stole LSU's coach Nick Saban out from under us because they're assholes. And of the 17 national titles they've won, surprisingly, I was very, very shocked. Alabama's only had 2 Heisman winners. 2. That's Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry. So they went almost 100 years without a Heisman winner, and I've had 2 in the last 10 years. I'm surprised that the team's been so dominant for all this time and only had 2 Heisman winners. Are you as shocked as that as I am?
I was aware of that actually, because I remember when Mark Ingram won the Heisman, he was the first player ever to win from Bama, and that was really surprising. And it's also even more surprising that Alabama hasn't had a dominant quarterback out of that program since they've been doing all the winning. Since Tua is the first dominant quarterback they had, and that makes, to me, their winning that much more impressive.
It's so impressive that the way I think of it with them is it's a team sport. You don't need to have some awesome individual to go out there to win it all. You've got a strong team there, and that was shown when Hurts was injured and Tua came in. Like, they can virtually switch out guys all the time, and everyone's there for the team, not just for themselves. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes to, in contrast to school like Oklahoma, who just keeps recycling good quarterbacks. They went from Baker Mayfield to Kyler Murray, now and then to Jalen Hurts, and then now they have a gluttony of other guys, high 5-star recruits.
Yeah, they just seem to keep turning them over, don't they? It just seems unfair, to be honest.
Yeah,
it seems unfair. Right, now, enough of those guys because I don't particularly like them. So let's move on to number 2, to Ohio State. Now, Ohio State has been around for 140 years. The Buckeyes have won 40 conference titles. 40. So that means every third year they're winning one, and that shows real dominance. They've also got 7 Heisman Trophy winners in that time, and have actually dominated the Big Ten since they took over. I think their stadium in Columbus is one of the most breathtaking things that you witness. It's very hard for a team to go there. They're loud, they're passionate. Ohio State is football.
Yeah, and they've turned into just probably the number 1 feeder in defensive backs. They are truly DBU right now, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, it was LSU for a while, in my opinion. And I think just the prospects they've been turning over into the draft the past 5 to 7 years since Urban Meyer was there has just been amazing.
I think their ability the last few years to score points. So I think, especially last year, they were averaging about 55 or 60 per game. And that's just, I know it's college and there's not as much defense, but their defense has been unreal. And you're saying LSU used to be DBU, which I think they actually were, but the Buckeyes are certainly a lot stronger there now. So
Yeah, and to have a great team that makes it watchable, they have to have an arch rival. And then that's probably the most intense. I mean, can you think of a more intense rival than Ohio State, Michigan?
No, I think Michigan probably sees it as Notre Dame, maybe. But Ohio State definitely sees theirs as Michigan. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think because obviously Alabama and Auburn's intense, and you have, but I just don't think it's quite to the same degree as Ohio State, Michigan.
No, not at all. I think Michigan State, they want theirs to be Michigan, but there's no competition there at all. So.
Yeah.
And having said that, they are our number one team on this list, the Michigan Wolverines. The Wolverines have been around for the 450 years of college sport. They've won 962 games. They will easily be the first team to win 1,000 games. I think that they're about 40 wins ahead of anyone else. So they will certainly cross the 1,000 mark first. Michigan hasn't really been as strong the last sort of couple of years. They've really been a lackluster team, I suppose. Huge stadium down there, 107,000. It's actually the biggest stadium in the US. I think it's the third biggest stadium in the entire world. So the fact that that's a college is kind of a bit surprising to me, but that stadium is just incredible. So 11 national titles, 42 conference titles. They've been around for forever. They just need to get better, I think.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh, it was funny because Jim Harbaugh actually still has a house in the Bay Area. And I actually have to apologize to him because he lives a few blocks away from my parents. And so whenever I was in town and I'd walk the dog, I'd make sure the dog would crap in front of his property because he was coaching the 49ers at the time. So yes. I was, my dog did his business there a number of times. So from now on, I owe Jim Harbaugh a bit of an apology since he's coaching Michigan now. But I think his tenure at Michigan has been a disappointment. I mean, they put a lot of people in the pros, but I think when he took over Michigan, you can't call it a success without beating Ohio State. And if you can't beat Ohio State, you're not going to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, there was so much talk when he returned about the prodigal son is coming home, the coach of this. Yeah. He's got all this experience, he can come back, and I hoped it would work, but it kind of hasn't. They've hit a few lean patches. I think one year that they went, was it 6-6 or 6-7 or something? So that a few years where they were sort of struggling a bit. But as you said, they're still producing enough talent to have them drafted each year. I just don't think in their division, for such a team that's been dominant for over 100 years, they've really fallen off the wayside since about 2000.
Yeah, and I'm actually happy about it. But again, I'm sorry, Jim. It's water under the bridge. You had your tenure with the 49ers. That's over with. Forgive me.
Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed our top 20 list of all time. Nate, tell the good people about your show starting tomorrow.
Yeah, the good people and good people only. Otherwise, I will have you removed from viewership because YouTube likes to censor. Anyway, come check out the doggone show tomorrow, 3 p.m. It's going to be, I'd like to say it's unfiltered, but it's going to be filtered. Thanks a lot, Google. Anyway, check it out. You're going to at least get some unique perspectives on things, whether you agree or disagree. Check out the doggone show.
Very nice. Definitely worth a listen, I'm sure. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We will be back a day earlier next week. I had a few issues yesterday, but they'll be back. So thanks for that. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down here. Follow us both on Twitter or don't. I'm easy. Until next week. Hooroo.